Welcome to Episode 4 of From Idea to Incorporated, the Alberta Entrepreneur's Legal Roadmap. I'm Chad Graham, and I want to talk to you about how you're going to structure your new entity. It doesn't matter what door you walked through to get into it. I discussed these in Episode 3, the side hustle, the startup, or buying an existing business. You now face the same question that every Alberta entrepreneur faces. What legal structure do you actually operate under, and does it matter? Well, it matters a great deal. There are 3 foundational options, and the difference between them is not academic. They determine what happens to your house if the business gets sued. Too many times I've watched people who haven't thought this through end up with absolute personal disasters in their lives. Others, who have thought it through, end up having a much smoother path forward no matter what difficulties come their way. Let's start with a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is the simplest structure there is. It's the fundamental business structure that naturally comes to you in starting up a new business. You and the business are legally the same person. Now, if you're operating under your own name, there's technically nothing to register at all. But many people want to operate under a trade name, and that's perfectly reasonable to do. Something other than your personal legal name. That name is then registered at the corporate registry under Alberta's Partnership Act. The advantage of this is simplicity. Low cost, minimal paperwork, and all the profit flows directly onto your personal tax return. No corporate taxes to file. There's no legal separation between you and your business, but you have the advantages of many elements of a business. You can deduct business expenses from your income, for example. That includes when you hire people, their salaries come off of your taxable income, obviously. Money you reinvest in the business is treated as pre-tax money. But if the business is sued, if it owes money it can't pay, you or your personal assets, your house, your savings, your RSP are exposed. Now, for a very small, low-risk side hustle, this is an extremely acceptable trade-off. Even for a new startup, this often is the way to go. But anything that builds into real value with real contracts or a real risk of a customer getting hurt, usually this isn't the way you want to go forward long-term. A partnership is another option. This is what happens legally the moment 2 or more people carry on a business together with a view for profit. Governed in Alberta by the Partnership Act. Here's the part that surprises most people. You don't need a written agreement for a partnership to legally exist. If you and a friend start splitting the work and revenue in a business, you may already be legally partners, whether you meant to be or not. Now, the advantage of this is shared resources, capital, skill, workload split across more than one person. The disadvantage is that the liability isn't just unlimited, it's joint and several. Each partner can be personally on the hook for the full debts and obligations of the partnership, including ones run up by the other partner without your knowledge. This is exactly why a written partnership agreement spelling out contributions, decision-making, exit mechanisms, and indemnity is essential the moment you're in business with someone else, even if it's a friend or a family member. Maybe especially if it's a friend or a family member, because this prevents personal disputes from arising out of the business. You just follow the business rules. Then there is the traditional structure that most people think of with a business, a corporation. This is no longer a sole proprietorship. This is no longer a partnership. This is a separate legal entity altogether. A corporation formed under the Alberta Business Corporations Act is considered a legal person. The corporation owns its own assets, signs its own contracts, and is liable for its own debts, separately from you, the shareholder. The primary advantage of a corporation is, of course, limited liability. Generally speaking, your personal exposure is essentially nothing. It's limited to what you've invested in the company, not your entire personal net worth. Now, there are real exceptions to this shield: personal guarantees, a director's liabilities for unpaid source deductions, and piercing the corporate veil in cases of fraud and criminality. But we'll come back to these another time. Corporations in general open the door to many advantages, including income splitting in the right circumstances, tax deferral through retained earnings, and a structure that's actually sellable down the road, which we'll cover extensively in this series and in my From Build to Sold series. Now, the trade-off is cost and complexity. Incorporation fees, ongoing corporate maintenance, separate tax filings, the obligation to actually run it like a business, which brings us to why registering and organizing a corporation are two very different things. People confuse this and it lands them in hot water all the time. More on that in a future episode. How do you choose between a sole proprietorship, a partnership, and a corporation? Well, there is no universally correct structure here. Only the right fit for your risk tolerance, your revenue, and your growth plans. A low risk, low revenue side hustle might genuinely be fine as a sole proprietorship now and probably forever. But as it begins to grow, as it becomes a business, or if you're looking at a business with real liability exposure, significant revenue, real growth ambitions, it'll almost always outgrow that structure. And the earlier you make the switch, the cleaner it is. In episode 5, we're going to look at this from a different angle. How these Canadian structures compare to the American terms you've probably heard. I get these questions so often, I'm sure you'll want to listen to this episode. We'll look at things like LLCs and S-Corps and where that comparison holds up and where it breaks down. If you're not sure what structure fits your situation, or you've read about something in a book published in the United States, book a consultation with me at the link below, and I'll see you in episode 5.